Hey, it's been a while. My podcast with Mizenhauer continues about StarCraft 2, and a big event has happened in the StarCraft 2 universe. IEM Katowice, I'd say almost GSL worthy. Like, it's like that. Here's how I would describe the prestige levels of the different tournaments. I think BlizzCon is number one. I think GSL is number two, and then I think these high level international events where all the best players show up is generally number three. But when I'm rating those in my mind, it really depends on who you play at those events as to how good that actual run is at each particular event. So
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The biggest difference between BlizzCon and IM is the means by which you qualify, which leads to some people would argue that BlizzCon is kind of 8-8 split, so it's not as good.
mm-hmm,
So some people would say Katowice is like the best for
mm-hmm,
weekender there is
yeah, like
in
I
that regard.
like I split it a bit more evenly. I think it depends purely on who you meet in your bracket as to how good your run is. So like, here's a funny one. I actually think Innovation's second place finish in GSL Season 1 is better than a lot of his first place wins in GSL, just in terms of who he had to play.
Okay.
Because he basically went through numbers 3 through 10 for that first GSL second place, but he lost to number 2 at Sulky at the very end. Whereas
hmm
I thought he had like some easier runs later on that weren't as good as that first run.
So
Kind of
we'll have
weird,
some
right?
fun dissecting the runs of various players from this tournament.
Yeah. It's like that's why I don't think that's why I don't think all runs are created equally. It's kind of like if you ever watch NBA, it's like Dirk Nowitzki's one trophy is worth more than anybody else's because he like carried a bunch of corpses to the end.
Yep,
Whereas can't really say the same about these super teams, right?
that's true.
So that's kind of how I follow along those lines. But we're here to really talk about Katowice. And for those who don't know, I was also watching a bunch of CS:GO, so I wasn't able to watch any of the group stage matches. So I guess we'll start with there. The biggest surprise I found was basically Maru and Innovation are out of the group stages, and I was asking you about it before this podcast started, but I want to give I want your take on what's happening in the Terran metagame right now. Like, what is it that's making them not win?
Yeah, so Tara's kind of been this is like a continuation of something that's been going on since really last around November of last year. So this would be 2017 when they got rid of the mothership core, I think, and then they buffed the stalker, changed the stalker, like started tinkering with a lot of Protoss things. Um, and it's kind of been this continuous thing since then where the stalker's been changed a bunch of times, Chrono Boost's been changed, blah, 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 blah. So Terran's been in a constant state of trying to deal with the fact that Protoss is able to get into the mid game super fast.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, Maru was pioneering the proxy meta thing, which made it so Protosses who tried to skip too quickly got punished because there were so many different things they had to defend. They couldn't defend all of them, et cetera, et cetera. But now Terrans have sort of settled into just a lot of two base all ins.
Mm-hmm.
And, as one would expect, all these players are really, really good. Even when your name is Patience, you still get good playing against the same two base all ins all the time. And I think, I'm not the authority on this one. Someone can feel free to correct me, but it feels to me like this meta of Terrans doing two base pushes is pretty much solved by the best Protoss players. And
Right.
so that's the Protoss issue. On the other side is the people are still going to complain that Zerg is just creep spreads way too easily. Um, Hydra Bane is just super strong. Terran have a hard time expanding versus Zerg. Like there's so many problems for Terran right now that they're only really strong in the mid game, and yeah, that's not even like element of strength anymore because Protoss are really strong there too, and so are Zerg.
Right. So basically, what you're telling me is we're back to 2011. Like,
Yeah, Terran are
times have
fucked.
changed, right? So
they're screwed. I mean, Obviously, only one Terran made it out of the groups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, when we look at like shocking losses, um, I don't know if anything was like, that crazy in a way. Like Innovation went 1-4,
Like
but
he
besides
won
the
his most meaningless match against Cyril. Yeah.
yeah, and like he lost to Ragnarok. Maybe you can like that's like the biggest shock I can think of from the group stage as far as Terran goes.
Mm-hmm.
Maru, I have to double check. I assume. Let me hope. I don't want to. Yeah, Maru beat Lambo and everything, so like not all is the world's not quite ending.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's tough for Terran right now, and we'll see how they do in GSL. It'll be a big back to the preparation format. We'll see if that changes anything.
All right. So here's my thoughts as someone who's watched a bunch of StarCraft 2, studied all of the history and stuff. If you want to be the greatest, you got to do it in a time when everything is going to shit for your race. And what I mean by that is, like, you talk about MVP, Polt, Tasia. I can always point to a specific time in their life, in their career span, where their race was complete shit, but they themselves did great. And Maru did it to a certain extent, but he has to do it again here, I think. And Innovation has never done it, which is kind of weird because I think like Innovation's like strengths are kind of all right. I guess I'll go on an Innovation rant for a bit. I think he's simultaneously overrated and underrated, and I think he's overrated in general for how great he is in comparison to every other great player. Because like everybody assumes he's like leagues above. Like the way people talk about him, they make him sound like he's leagues above everybody else. When I'm not even certain he's like the greatest of all time. Like I still have like MVP over him if I change all the criteria to favor him. Still think life outs him. Like I think there's pretty good arguments for both soO and Tasia above him. Like there's a bunch of different things about it, so I don't think it's that clear cut. But what's underrated about him is that he's freakishly good in metas where he literally only has like a 51%, 50.5, maybe even just 50% like odds of winning for in a theoretical like Terran versus X game. Like it doesn't even matter what kind of play style Terran is playing, so long as they have some advantage, he can take that, refine that to the maximum, and beat almost anybody. Like that's his like crazy strength, right?
Yeah.
But like that's also like his freakish like weakness is like he can't win in metas that are below that threshold. So it really depends. Like that's kind of like my feelings about Innovation in general and why I feel like he's generally misrepresented when people talk about him.
He was actually really interesting in this tournament because I did watch the group stages and he did not play particularly well.
Mm-hmm.
But the match he played against Cyril, I mean, he was just, you look at the way people describe ZBT as this thing where Zerg gobbles up the whole map, spreading creep everywhere, blah, blah, blah. Terran gets in their little corner. They just make ghosts and they turtle. But this was completely different. They played a game on King's Cove where Innovation controlled the majority of the map, kept Cyril's number of expansions down. Just yeah, he completely dominated Cyril, and that was Cyril's first offline match loss in forever.
Yep.
So at that point, that to me was like the most impressive series anyone had played all tournament. It'll go on to get supplanted as the tournament goes on, but at that point, I was like, wow, Innovation may be 1-4 in his group, but that one match showed that he still has a lot of talent, which is part of what makes his result so befuddling.
Yeah, because like he only pulled it out against the hardest player in his group.
Nobody else. Maru did the same thing. Maru beat Lambo, and he also beat Dark.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost to Trap and even Lenok. So
I can't believe he lost to Lenok. Can't believe Lenok is still a thing.
Can't believe it. Yeah, there are a couple people who I can't believe they're still a thing for sure.
Yeah, particularly Ragnarok. I feel like Solar is slowly dipping into that category if he isn't already in there. Plenty of players I have criticisms for. All right, so move on to the playoffs and
playoffs.
Okay, is there something else you wanted to talk about?
No, we'll come back to Group D when we eventually get around to it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. First, I want to talk a bit about Hero. I think this guy basically got boosted in this tournament. And what I mean by that is I don't actually think he's that good of a player, except in PvP. And guess how many Protoss he had to play in this tournament?
Yeah, he played a lot of PvP.
Like literally only PvP, except one match against Major.
It is remarkable how well he did in PvP though.
Yeah, he's always been very good in PvP. I'll give him that. I think mechanically he's top, at least top three Protosses of all time. Like
But what's interesting is,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, basically like this guy he can play a bunch of different styles. He can play aggressively, and if he can drag the game into a macro, into not a macro game, but like a mechanically based game where both sides have to control the battle and macro at the same time, he's generally going to win out against any Protoss that's currently playing.
I think the Group A and Hero in particular show that there's a clear hierarchy in Protoss versus Protoss right now. Stats went 5-0 in that group. Zest went 4-1. Hero lost to Stats and Zest. Hero lost to Hero then beat Trap and Deer.
Yep.
And Stats beat Neeb. So to me, it really seems like Stats and Zest are the best two. Hero is like the gatekeeper, and everybody else is, underneath them.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw those games. Actually, I didn't see those games, but like that's how I kind of think about them specifically. Like I still think like Hero's mechanically better than either of those guys you're talking about, Stats or Zest. But like I think Stats and Zest are just smarter than he is. So it's kind of like a bad matchup for him, and they're not so bad mechanically that Hero can't overwhelm them.
I think we're getting closer and closer to it. The more we've seen of Stats, I still feel like I barely understand what exactly makes him so good.
Okay.
May
as well jump to that side of the bracket because we'll save the best for last. We all know what the best is, I think, in this particular tournament.
Well, we can, as far as the round of 12, because the round of 12 was pretty brief, right?
Yeah.
Neeb beating Ragnarok, not a surprise to you?
No, I actually think Ragnarok is trash. I think he's been trash for years now. And I actually think like this might be the height of his achievements, making it to a playoffs and then getting knocked out by somebody way better than him.
This probably will be. I don't see him doing well in GSL ever.
Yeah, so like credit to Ragnarok for like pure endurance, like very similar to like Ryung and Friends or Top. Like you weren't good, but you out-survived a lot of people just through sheer patience, I guess. And here you are.
And I think Ragnarok still to this day is interesting in a way because he tried to do the whole jump to WCS thing, and he's been like slammed by visa issues and has been unable to. But still he managed to He managed to go to IEM and qualify for this, and he's in GSL, so doing something. So good for him.
Yeah.
The last match of the round of 12. Did you watch that one?
Solar TY. Yeah, I saw that. I wasn't particularly impressed by TY, but like it felt like basically Solar didn't have to do anything special to beat TY, which is why I asked about the whole Terran thing, because it had been a while since I'd watched a bunch of Terran games, and it felt like it was pretty Zerg favored. So
yeah, he just got Zerg. Zerg makes a lot of units. Terran has a hard time doing damage, and it just gets out of control.
Yeah, basically TY was an MVP. TY couldn't create a 30-second time in which to kill the Zerg before it all went down. So
I'm telling you, even MVP would have.
He would have had shovels. But here's the thing about MVP.
Because MVP, like, he did okay with Hellions and stuff. It seems like Hellions never get into mineral lines anymore,
Yeah, but no. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about MVP that people forget or don't really know, or maybe I'm just like over exaggerating in my head. You can pick whichever one you think is the most accurate after you hear my explanation. The thing about MVP is this: he is the best at self-evaluation in relative to his opponent. And what I mean by that is like for whatever reason, he's able to dissect everything his opponent is good at, and he's also able to honestly evaluate all of his own strengths and weaknesses, and then he just aligns the series to his best strengths relative to his opponent's weaknesses. And that's like my inherent problem with a bunch of StarCraft 2 players in general. Maybe it's just because I saw MVP like very early on in my spectator career, or whatever you want to call it. But that's what always made MVP special to me, was that he could always find the single path in which he could survive. Whereas I don't see that same characteristic in a lot of the best players. Like I don't see it in Maru. Maru lives or dies off of his playing style. I don't see it in Innovation. I definitely don't see it in TY. Like I actually do see it in soO quite a bit, which is why like I've always attached myself to soO more than a bunch of the other more modern players. But in general, like most players just don't have that special ability to evaluate things. So even if like the meta was terrible, I still think like I'll put it this way: TY is basically just playing normally, but like MVP wouldn't have played normally. He would have found the highest percentage chance. It would have been like maybe it would have still been a very low percentage chance, but still would have enacted the best plan possible. Whereas I don't think TY did. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I see people lose to Solar, I wonder like,
Why
well,
do you
where did it
exist?
all go wrong? Because I feel like Innovation would have been Solar if they had played.
Yeah.
And I feel like Mario would have beaten Solar. And I feel
Mhm.
like on paper TY should have beaten Solar, but
But here's the thing: like Group D is
didn't happen.
actually a pretty easy group. If I'm looking at it, like Bunny is not that great.
Yeah.
Ethermal's exactly where you expect him to be. Scarlet has been good right lately. Like it's a lot easier than a bunch of these other groups.
Yeah, Group D was well, the Group D was without a doubt, even before we got to the playoffs, so we found out who won the tournament. Group D was already the most interesting group results wise. And once we loop back around to soO, we can start from there.
All right.
Um, but
Okay.
you want to do bottom half of the bracket as we work our way.
Yeah. Work our way to the ultimate storyline.
Yeah, so Stats beating Neeb, not a surprise. Stats really good PvP. Neeb has struggled against solid Protoss. Like if he struggles in Showtime, he's gonna have a really hard time with Stats, and that's kind of how it went.
Like I've like basically this always happens to the top players. Like remember when Neeb was the best Protoss player, arguably, I
Hmm.
guess. I still think he was, but in 2016 it's basically the best Protoss player at the end.
Yeah, he probably was.
Yeah. Like the entire problem I had with like the narrative at the time, like, oh, this guy's the next greatest thing, blah blah blah, was anytime you reach that point, every Protoss player should theoretically look at what you're doing and then copy what you've done, make it part of their game, and then all of a sudden you're on equal ground again, or lower ground, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to Denis throughout the rest of his career. Still a solid player, still very good, but for obvious reasons, he's not that dominant force, right? So that's kind of what,
Well, I mean, I just think in particular in PvP,
in particular in PvP.
PvP has been tough for him,
But I mean, like it,
for sure.
like I don't know if it's fair to call it in just PvT right now, just because I think it's Protoss favored also,
Hmm.
and I haven't seen his PvZ, so we'll just leave it at PvP, I guess.
Yeah,
Right?
but I think yeah, like he's had a lot of troubles with Showtime, and Stats is just like Showtime on steroids.
Yeah, I think.
So there's no reason to believe he would win that match, and it
Mhm.
didn't look close.
Yeah, Dark Solar. I'm pretty sure Dark is just a better player. Like for some reason, Solar still believes in the meta.
I can't believe Solar beat Dark in that SSL finals. I still can't believe it. That's one of the great travesties of
No,
the
that's one of my
Korean StarCraft
confirmations.
2.
Dark is a choker for me.
I mean, yeah, he did what Solar did, like all in on a four-player map
Yeah.
in Game 7. I mean, that takes some balls, but yeah, uh, I think history has proven that Dark is the generally superior player, and he proved it again.
Mm-hmm.
Again.
Then go to start stats Dark. Who did you have going into this one? Like, did you think somebody was favored?
So I wanted Dark to win, so it would be a ZVZ final.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Just because it
and we'll
helps
get
Sue,
more into
yes.
that logic later, but yeah, Stats has really just beaten Dark in a lot of finals now. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of finals, a lot of round of fours. Like, obviously Stats lost to Dark in that first SSL,
Mm-hmm.
but I think since then, Dark lost in the finals of the Super Tournament last year to Stats, lost in the finals of SSL in 2017 to Stats, lost in the round of four at IEM Katowice in 2017 to Stats. I mean, he's starting to lose to Stats every time they play in an important match,
Mm-hmm.
and it happened again.
Right. May as well do a little bit of a side tangent here because
Yep.
you talked about it a bit earlier. Stats is kind of like a black box for everybody, and what I mean by that is like he's very hard to describe exactly what it is he's doing that's making him such a winner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he just does everything well, but in a way that like I'm sure like some like if you ask like a big fan of his like Ellen Toast or something, like he'll tell you exactly what Stats is doing so well. Just like Ollie would tell you exactly what Zest is doing well.
Well, first off,
But
Ollie's completely wrong. Like,
yeah, but
uh,
to me, when I look at Stats, I'm like it just everything like comes together and it all just looks good, if you know what I mean.
mm-hmm. like what I like when I look at stats like throughout the years. Here's how I describe him. He's very similar to Classic, except I think he has a higher. I I think he all ins more on his ideas than Classic does. If that makes sense. Like I feel like Classic is a bit more reactive in terms of his play, whereas like Stats is like I'm gonna come into this series. I have an idea of what plan I'm going to execute, whether that's going into the mid game or late game, and then I hit them hard, right? And in Classic's case, he might have a bit more of a variable play style. Like I've always described Classic as like when Classic was in his prime, I always described him as like, yeah, he's either the second or third best Protoss in every category of skill you'd like to name,
Mm-hmm.
but he was never the best single best at any one of them. Stats is similar, except I think he's the best at being decisive.
Okay. I mean, Stats for reference in this tournament, I guess Wax was in his ticker duties was going on about how ridiculous Stats' record was
Mm-hmm.
throughout the tournament, but he went 6-1 in the offline qualifiers,
Yeah.
and then he goes 10-2 in the group stages, and then he wins 3-0-3-1. So we're looking at what like 22 and like two or so, 22 and four or something like that going into the finals. He was on fire this tournament, and it didn't look close when he played Dark at all.
Yeah. Like basically the thing the thing about stats is like when you look at the numbers, like whether it's like results or whatever, or specifically this tournament, they all look really good. But when you watch him play, like nothing makes you think this guy's a bone jaw. That's kind of the weird thing, right? That's the whole
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
about
it
him.
doesn't. Well, I mean, maybe that's Protoss in a way.
You would think, maybe.
I don't know. I've never like watched a
Have you?
Protoss player and been like, wow, this guy is just like the greatest thing ever.
I had that feeling. Let me think. Is there a player I can think of that gave me that feeling?
Like like Zest, you'd be like back. Let's say Zest was like doing when he was doing everything right,
Yeah, when he was beating
You'd be
up
like watch,
Sue.
and then you'd look down and he'd have like 1,000 minerals, and you'd be like, okay, this guy's immortal. You know?
Yeah, no, he's definitely mortal.
Yeah.
The only guy I can think of that had that really had everything was Rain.
Hmm.
That's it. Like
Okay, I can
if
see
I'm just
that.
looking at the eye test only, it's probably Rain.
Okay.
But the like Rain had the unfortunate symptom, I guess, of not realizing of basically he didn't mature fast enough as a player because he ran into MVP and he should have beaten MVP in that semifinals in GSL. But like his inherent like approach in that series made it so that MVP basically just controlled his mind, and then like MVP won that thing.
Well, I've argued with Ollie. I think Rain 2015 was like just ridiculous
No,
as
he's
far as
that's
Protoss
actually
goes.
the prime Rain, I guess. If you want to talk about like Rain in 2012 to 2013, his execution was better, but in 2015 he still had most of that execution, but he was a very very smart player, way smarter than he was before.
Yeah, exactly. He had like now he had the whole breadth of build. He could do everything. He could macro and he could all in and he could hit timing and he just had like great understanding of everything. When he won GSL, I mean like he was just so incredible. I think that was
That was
if
your
you talk
Bonjour
about
Protoss, like the eye
yeah,
test
right, that
wise.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that for me that was it.
Yeah. Like I feel like nobody really nobody really like recalls Rain in like in quite the nostalgic tones as like the other great players, but for Protoss, I think he was definitely I think he was definitely my favorite to watch because during that specific period though, I didn't like him as much in the earlier periods because he wasn't as smart, but that period, like the funniest thing he did was like he kept tricking everybody for some reason. Like every single match, like it didn't matter who was casting. It could be like Testosis or Rotterdam or whoever. I don't know if it was the same in Korea, but basically like, yeah, man, this Rain guy, he's a macro Protoss. He's gonna play. He's gonna play the late game. And then every fucking player also bought into this and like, I'm gonna go into the late game. I'm gonna try to outscale Rain, and then Rain's like, I'm gonna all in, and then Rain just wins.
Yeah.
Like I always thought he was genius for that.
No, he figured it out. He was the complete player by the time, sorry, I had to donate a kidney and stuff, but he was pretty much the complete player by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess back to present day.
Yeah, back to the back to another all-time great.
Yeah.
So the final guy we've been saving last is soO. And,
Yeah.
All right, you want to start this off because he basically plays Zest first.
Well, we got to go all the way back to
Let's go back to Group D. Tell me about Group D.
Because Group D is soO's tournament was supposed to be over. If I'm looking at, according to Wikipedia, Group D started at what's EST? I don't know what that. 10:55 Eastern Standard Time, which is where I am. So for you, it's 7:55.
Yeah.
And by it looks like, I can't believe they did this.
Oh my god, he went 0-3.
He went 0-3. Less than like a couple hours later, he was 0-3. He was 0-3. And there's a tweet his team put out where he literally, I mean, you got to read this tweet to believe it. So I'm going to pull it up real fast. He said, after losing 3 games, I almost gave up. But when I realized there was a small opportunity to advance, I knew I could win this tournament. So, prophetic words, if I've ever heard them. soO managed to win. He wins his next match 2-0. And so it goes into the last match. And because of the whole way the groups worked out, there's potentially 4 players who are going to be 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously one of them can advance. Deer wins a game against Bunny. Oh no, Deer wins a game against Euthermal, which means that Euthermal will be a negative map score.
Oh my god.
soO 2-0 Scarlet, so he's even map score.
Mm-hmm.
And Bunny's already screwed because he's like 1 and 3 going into it.
Mm-hmm.
So because Deer won the 1 game and soO won 2-0, soO advances 2 and 3 with a 6-6 map score.
That's some fate right there.
Yeah, so that is crazy. He thought he was done. I thought he was done. He gets paired up against Zest.
Yeah.
I personally was a little worried about this. I think soO and Zest soO's been having a bit of trouble with ZVP lately. Seems like he gets caught off guard by a lot of all-ins and stuff, but against Zest,
that's
really
weird,
good.
That's weird because like he was crushing all the all-ins here.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. soO, he was 2 and 6 in the first 3 matches, and after that, I think he was like 17 and 5 the rest of the tournament. Like completely different player. After being in an 0-3 hole, but he beat Zest. I don't think he looked better.
Yeah, like I was like when I saw this matchup, I was like, oh, this is gonna be great because in my mind I was thinking maybe this time Ollie is going to be right about Zest, even though he was wrong the last 5 times when he hyped up Zest. Maybe this time Zest is finally gonna come back. I watched games and I'm like, what the fuck was Ollie thinking? Like,
Ollie actually said that like a week before Zest got eliminated from GSL. Ollie says that this is the best he's ever seen Zest, even better than 2016.
Listen, man. Hope springs eternal. Like but even here's the thing though, man. You got to be realistic. Even I gave up on like MVP after like 2013. I was like, listen, you are a fucking legend. Probably my favorite StarCraft 2 player ever. You're done.
Yeah,
you're done.
You retired him. It's over.
Yeah, like, but
man,
yeah.
So
fucking Zest. Okay.
So the next match is basically the match I thought was actually going to be easier than the match against Zest. Cyril's obviously a god. He's gonna always have this like deity status in StarCraft history forever because he's the foreigner that won BlizzCon.
Yeah.
So when I say when I use god, I'm not just using it in the way Tastosis would use it, he's gonna always be larger than life.
Oh yeah, I should. I'll make a side tangent here. This has always pissed me off. Is like when you call Sen a legend, like the Taiwanese player, the
Yeah,
Zerg
yeah.
player Sen a legend, but you're like that classic guy. He's all right. He still needs to prove himself. Like fucking carrying fucking GSL trophies in his bag, SL
Uh,
trophies. Like, come on, man, come on. At
yeah,
least gotta be consistent with the shit.
we got to work on our superlatives. It says yes for sure. But so Cyril Sue was I don't know. You watched the whole series?
Yeah, of course.
Game three was kind of like the. I think game three was the best game of StarCraft I've seen in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And Sue basically, for a while, shout out to Lambo. I like this guy. I did an article with him. He's a funny dude. Lambo has been saying for a while the Korean Zergs have no idea how to play ZVZ.
Yeah.
And Europeans, they tech up quickly. They take a lot of bases. They get the hive, lurkers, adaptive talons, vipers, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sue is like, all right, it's like, it's almost like hard mode. I'm gonna beat Cyril, and I'm not gonna get a hive, and I'm not gonna get all these things. I'm just gonna make roaches.
Yes.
And he showed, he did two base layer. Foreigners don't really do two base layer anymore. He had two base layer. He made roaches. He had better roach control than Cyril. He took better fights.
Which is really,
Constantly.
really hard to do, considering roaches are not the most elegant of units.
I mean, no one, as Wax said, Cyril's family crest would be like a hydralisk with a wreath of banelings, and Sue's family crest is just a roach.
Yep.
Just a roach. Because yeah, I mean, I remember one of the games of his I always liked the most was him versus Sulky in GSL
Mm-hmm.
from 2013, and
Yeah.
they spawned like horizontal on Frost. So it's literally just this tug of war on the bottom half of the map of just roaches going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, just Sue's roach versus roach is amazing. He never gave Cyril any room to breathe. Never gave Cyril a chance to tech. Um, he in game three he didn't get two armor ever, even though he could have.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lead and he didn't get a hive for further upgrades. He could have. Sue just did it. It's almost like I said, like almost like hard mode enabled. I'm just gonna beat you without a hive. Just roaches, and I mean he did it. He's the best CBZ player in history for a reason.
Right. So here's I'll add some historical context and some other stuff I think about Sue. I think we both did a podcast before BlizzCon, and even before like Cyril, right after basically everybody considered Cyril to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I specifically told you the player who has the highest chance of taking out Cyril was Sue. I think I said that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And I
I
think
think we're
you
in
said
agreement
that
on
too,
that one.
right? We were agreed on this
Yeah,
point. And the specific reason I said was yes, European ZVZ as a whole, I think theoretically is better than the Korean style ZVZ. But is it better than Sue's ZVZ? Because that's a very specific beast. Like
yeah. I mean,
when you were talking a bit about his 2013 period where he was fighting Sulky, like there's actually a funny sort of triangle rivalry between him, Sulky, and Symbol at this specific point in regards to only ZVZ. All three of them were like very, very strong masters of high tempo, fast paced, roach based ZVZ with tech switches. And the whole point of that was you were supposed to you're supposed to get as much economy as you can, then get the roaches and smash the other guy, not through sheer force, but through speed, outflanking, and just constantly getting on their ass. Basically, that's kind of how those three players played it. And because those three players kept running into each other, they evolved very, very fast, which was why I always thought that was like the moment when like Sue, that was like a very specific moment in Sue's career where I thought he actually ascended above, like he ascended above the rest as the best ZVZ player at that point. And then it gets confirmed later on when he like smashes Life in that semifinals
yep,
ZVZ,
yep,
right? And
exactly.
so I've always considered Sue's ZVZ to be his best matchup because it allows for his specific playstyle to shine, which is high economy, high mechanics, and specifically rolling over the other guy in the link between mid game to late game. Specifically that link. You can't get to end game. I don't think soO's as great in end game. Like he can play it, but he's not that great at it.
Oh, I mean, if it was him versus Serral and you just started them both on 5 bases with every tech in the Zerg arsenal, I mean, I think soO would just lose pretty quickly.
Yeah. So he has to specifically hit this specific, very specific timing. And I actually think Lambo was still correct in the way he was thinking about this game. If assuming he was thinking about it in the same way overall in terms of his ideology of how you've painted it out. He's
If you just say European Zerg versus Korean Zerg.
Yeah, if he was he was using that ideology, then I actually think he's absolutely correct. But soO is not a normal Korean Zerg. He's actually the epitome of everything they can do. So he basically just forced his identity through and beat Serral before Serral could get to Serral's specific end game point. That's kind of how I saw the series.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, that's that was the moment I was like, wow, that's pretty fucking legit, right?
Yeah, this was soO. He dictated the terms of the match. He showed that like the way he plays ZVZ is like, it may not be the right objective right way, but when he does it, it's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, it's like it might not be the objective right way, but I actually think it's the correct way soO himself should play that matchup.
Oh, I thought for sure. That's why it's tricky. Like you could say like European style maybe is better, maybe it's more advanced, maybe it's whatever adjectives you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
But give me a game with if I have to choose someone to play a ZVZ with my life on the line, I'm picking soO.
Yeah.
Because just whatever it is about his understanding of that mirror match, it transcends quote unquote Korean, quote unquote foreign ZVZ. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just
soO
ZVZ.
ZVZ, right? Like
Exactly.
It's very, very hard to for a player to reach that status in my mind, but soO definitely has for that matchup, right? It's also really. I also find it really, really funny that in a low key way, innovation kind of rained on soO's parade a bit.
Yeah, he stole unofficial world champion from. I don't know if you realize this, but Serral's been the unofficial world champion for a very long time.
Yeah.
And innovation stole on the group stage, so soO will have to be content with just being the IEM world champion instead of unofficial world champion also.
Yeah, I was more thinking of the fact that he basically stole Serral's undefeated streak for a meaningless group stage
exactly.
game.
Yeah, for $200 basically.
But shout outs to innovation. I actually like it's petty, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, no, they both play great games, and to Serral's credit, I still think he played pretty well this tournament.
Yeah.
He's got to be considered, the favorite to.
I still think he's one of the best players in the world. Like, I actually don't know if I actually knock him off from the first number one peg at all, really.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Team Liquid's going to be doing a power ranking in a couple of days. I will say there's a case to put Serral at 2, and there's a case to keep Serral at 1. I mean, losing to soO and ZVZ is not
that much of an indictment.
It's not a crime, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because it was still a very close series score-wise, 2-3.
Yeah, and game 3, I book it. You can quote me here. It's gonna be like a top 5 game of the year at the end of the year when the best games guys do their list.
Mm-hmm. So we move on to the semifinals. We've already gone over stats versus dark. So soO versus Hero. This one was less exciting to me. But I think it's just because Hero is not that good in CVP.
Yeah, Hero beat soO the last 2 times they played, which was in the last couple months. They played like twice in 2019, and he beat him both times.
Okay.
Including in the map tournament, which was like a month ago or so.
Yeah. Is that why you're like worried about his PvZ? I guess that makes sense because you did say his PvZ was like really iffy going to this tournament.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, and also think about this. So soO beats Serral, and then he goes to bed.
Yeah.
And he's got to wake up the next morning and play Hero. It's like, and also the match was like the early match of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, it started at 2 a.m. your time.
Makes sense.
It started super early, so it's, a little different schedule for him. He's starting in like the mid-afternoon or whatever,
mm-hmm.
or right around noon. So, yeah, it's sometimes you talk about trap games.
Yeah.
So, like, for soO, like, he beats Serral, and the final's 1 match away, and like, this is like a trap game right here.
Mm-hmm.
but beats Hero. I don't think it was another series where like it didn't look super close. Sue just made a lot of roaches and stuff and defended and like yeah. I mean, it looked a lot like the Zest series, honestly.
Yeah, like basically it just looked like the same typical stuff. Like, oh yeah, you're all inning, defend. Oh shit, we're going to late game, I win. Like that's kind of how it felt like. Like I don't think Hero had any win condition. Like given what I know about Hero as a player and given everything I saw going into this matchup because I basically rewatched everything. I didn't think Hero had any idea of how he should have confronted Sue. So
Well, we knew what Hero was gonna do. He was gonna all in
yeah,
because that's what Hero's done since the beginning of Legacy of Void.
yeah,
He can't go three base blink anymore, so he's gotta make a depth and he's got all in.
and just didn't work. Like that's
Didn't
it.
work, and so
Now we
that
move to
sets up it sets up a final between Sue and Stats rematch of GSL all those years ago.
mm-hmm.
It's crazy to think that's like around 2 years ago at this point. That Stats and Sue played. It was like what Sue's first GSL final in 3 years,
Yeah,
and stuff
it was
ever.
that one. Yeah.
So
So,
crazy. A lot of times gone by since, but
mm-hmm. Actually, let me check that score. I remember there was something really like
Sue
funny
went
about
down
it.
0-3 in that final.
Yeah, yeah.
So as we get to this one, first two games looked a lot like the Hero Zest series in that Sue went for these roach heavy compositions with like no upgrades,
Mm-hmm.
and Stats just made a lot of immortals,
Yeah.
and like it didn't look really close. It was 2-0 really fast,
Mm-hmm.
and it was eerily similar to the final from 2 years ago where Stats got ahead 3-0. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Um, but that time it was like he used the Oracle stasis traps or whatever they're called like
Mm-hmm.
really well. But this time it just looked like Sue had no like he knew how to play against S Hero, but it looked like he had no idea how to play against Stats
Yeah. At the beginning, anyway.
at the first two games. Yeah, that's that's what it seemed like, and I'm sure for everyone watching, it was kind of this feeling of like, here we go again.
I mean, I had that feeling the second he beat Sarah. I was like, oh, here we go again. Definitely gonna beat
Yeah,
second.
exactly. Yeah, easy semifinal. All right, see you in the finals. We can just
Book
call
it.
it a day here. We know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Sure, but I think so. I'm looking at the map order, and Kairos Junction was a kind of the changing of how these games went. Uh,
Okay.
where uh, so I was talking to someone um, during the match,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, "Oh, you see how Sue's on these like Roach Ravager compositions?" And I'm like, right now Stats attacking him and Sue's up like 20 supply. And I'm like, that's not enough. If you're going to be on roaches versus a bunch of immortals and stuff, you got to be up way more than that. And I remember as Sue crashes into Stats' third base on Kairos Junction, Sue's up 70 supply. It's like maxed versus 130.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying like, okay, now this works. This is like a sufficient number of supply.
Yes, that's the.
Yeah.
It's actually like the Stefano equation when he figured it out back in 2012. It was like, oh, so the max out I need to be maxed out by like 10 minutes if I want to crack a Protoss. Like
Exactly.
the game's changed, but the ratio is still similar. Like you need
Yeah,
that
I mean,
many.
eventually they'll get too many immortals and archons and storm, and you'll just be, you're screwed. You can't do anything. And like also Zergs, when they go this roach style, it seems like they're really slow on upgrades or forgoing them altogether.
Yeah,
But
it's just too mineral and gas intensive.
but the Protoss, he's still getting attack. I mean, he's got like +3 attack immortals.
Mm-hmm.
Those things might as well be one-shotting roaches.
Yep.
Um, but I guess Sue wins the game, and then King's Cove was kind of where I think the series really shifted. It was like now Sue, he's got a game under his belt. He seems to be playing with some measure of confidence, and he safely gets into Hydra Bane in the next two games.
Yeah.
Uh,
Basically, just
and
runs over
honest,
stats. Like I don't think those were close.
yeah, I mean Hydra Bane is where you want to be in
ZVP.
ZVP.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to note Stats did a lot of like Stalker Warp Prism harassment to keep creep back. normally people would use Archons. The Stalkers are obviously less of a commitment, but the Stalkers also don't scare you into making roaches.
Yep.
And it seemed like soO just was like, okay, you're gonna do this. You'll make Stargate units or something, whatever. I'm just gonna get up to my Hydra Den really fast, get Bane speed fast, and Hydra Bane just is much better than Roach against
Yeah. Like
against Protoss.
a small note here. Like I do respect stats actually as a strategist in general, but I think that was a mistake going for the stalker harass.
Mhm.
Like I actually think that's fine against almost any other Zerg. I'd argue it's actually pretty bad against Cyril too, but against any other Zerg, I actually think that's a fine move. But specifically against soO, like this is a guy who actually can ignore creep.
Mm-hmm.
Like like the way he plays, like like creep has never necessarily been like the thing he must have. So like you're
Oh, for
basically
sure.
getting like a small advantage that he doesn't even need. So I just thought that was like a mistake on his part.
Yeah, I mean, no one's more famous for taking fights off creep than soO. He'll
Yeah, and
roll
winning like the only other time there's only a few times in history where he like lost those fights.
yeah. I mean, there's some times where it's been awkward. I mean, even in this tournament, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were some times
Yeah.
where he'd he's playing against Terran or he's playing against Protoss. Like, all right, let's just run all my Baneleys off creep and see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, like a man.
Yeah, but yeah, like I mean, against Protoss, I don't even think he's particularly intent on spreading creep versus Protoss. He doesn't even seem too concerned with it at times.
Yeah, that's why I think it's just a strategic mistake specifically against soO. It's like you're not really gaining that much of an advantage against that
Mhm.
particular player. You gain an advantage against other Zergs, I think, but not against soO.
And so game six is actually you talked about respecting like stats' sense of strategy and
Mm-hmm.
approach to matches. This is interesting because stats also played a game on year zero versus Dark,
Yep.
and against Dark, who everybody. So if we look at our evaluations of the common evaluation, Dark is like really good late game player.
Mm-hmm.
Has great spellcaster usage, does stuff in kind of when he's behind, he makes stuff happen.
Yeah.
soO is more of like plays from ahead, not very good in the late game. If you can make the game last a long time, he'll probably lose.
Yep.
But stats, he took a third base on year zero against Dark. Against soO, he goes for a Soul Train.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what he was thinking with this one.
I Okay, so this is going to get into a very strange theoretical discussion about mentality. I think it's I don't actually know enough about stats to confirm this. Like I did know a little bit enough about MVP as a player kind of like estimate. I guess like obviously I'm not 100% sure. I'm not even sure if like I'm like 50% sure as to what he was thinking, but
Yeah.
like I vaguely throw it in the right direction. I can't say the same with stats on this specific series, but at least against soO, I think his thinking was like okay, so like because I don't think he recognizes the fact that first the stalker thing was not working. Like I think he thought that was like a legit plan against soO. So you go off of that, right? He started the first two pretty easily. He's like, okay, I win against the roaches. Next two, lose against Leading Hydra, whatever. Game six, here we go. And he's thinking in his head, okay, so soO generally is a choker, I guess. That's kind of how you want to think about it. And when I think when I think about StarCraft 2 the game, there are specific moments when you're playing where you're more likely to choke than other moments.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Yeah,
very
yeah.
very
Some
very
situation.
early on, like we're talking like two rack style. That's
Yeah,
when you're
some things put you under more pressure than other builds.
yeah. So like that's a high pressure moment for the defending player. For a Zerg player, the highest pressure moment is generally against a very strongly executed two base all in, aka
Mhm.
the Soul Train. So
Yeah, well, I mean, that has just a brief aside. That has been like the Korean mentality towards foreigners since like the beginning of time, though, right?
yeah,
Just like put pressure on them and they'll break.
yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if it's just because they think they're foreigners or because Idra like Idra like conditioned them all to think this always works,
Yeah,
because like
yeah.
Idra like famously broke under that to everybody. So I don't really know what the case is, but in this specific instance, I think that's what Stats was going for. Is like, okay, for whatever reason, my late game wasn't working because he couldn't identify the fact that the Stalker thing was the reason it wasn't working. So he's like,
Well, I mean,
okay,
he
let's.
was like I would even say late game. It's just like he was letting soO very safely get to Hydra Bane.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing any damage. soO was like defending any early pressure. He wasn't taking damage, and
Yeah, he basically
if
just
you
didn't
like,
do anything, right?
yeah, I mean, if you just let a Zerg, like any Zerg, it could be, I mean, maybe even Ragnarok. If you even let Ragnarok just like sit there and
Fucking
macro
Ragnarok.
up and take zero damage, he'd give you a
He give
good
you a
game. You
fight.
know what I mean?
No,
He
here.
might not beat stats, but it'll be close.
All right. So
But yeah,
here's the thing. Like we're gonna go back to MVP for a bit. Like here's the thing about evaluation and all that. Like when we're talking about StarCraft 2 players, like they do a majority. I'd say they do like 90% of their thinking before the tournament starts.
hmm
And basically, what they do is like they'll look through a build. They're like, okay, is this build good or not? Yes or no. If they put yes, they put it into their playbook for the tournament or whatever. And then when it doesn't work, they don't have the processing speed to figure out why it didn't work. That's
yeah,
kind of where I
yeah,
think Stats fell out, because in his mind he was thinking, "This is my late game build. This is my early game build. This is my all in." And he's like, "Okay, late game build is not working. What gives me the highest percentage chance to beat soO right now? Probably this all in." That's kind of how I thought he was thinking about this game.
hmm
Obviously, this is just speculation or whatever, but I actually agree with you. I think it's like strategically a blunder from Stats, because I think like he should have played for the late game on this map.
yeah. It's the biggest map in the pool. It's got a ton of chokes. I mean, this to me, this seems like the map where the classic soO late game image of him just his units just crashing upon storms and immortals and
Yeah, like
eventually tempests or carriers or whatever, and it's just a bad look.
like it's
But
like
yeah,
basically like all of his strengths become weaknesses on this map.
yeah, exactly. And I mean that's how it's happened. That like when they played Game 6 of the GSL final, that Stats won. Game 6 was on Daybreak, and Stats split the map and just made carriers. And soO was like, "Oh shit, I still don't." 2 years
I
later, still
still
doesn't
can't play
quite know
that
how to
game.
beat that.
Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, still. I mean, yeah, we're 2 years removed from that, and I still don't know if soO would have figured out how to win that game.
I don't think he would have.
But
If I like, it's been years, man. It's been years. We've
yeah,
watched soO for like we've watched soO at least twice as long as I've watched MVP. It's like
yeah,
at
it's
this point in
been
his career, he's not going to change.
no, but for whatever reason, like I said, Sats does is all in. soO defended it, well enough. It was close. Like to be fair, it was really close.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I
soO
said,
had to pull the
he's very
workers.
decisive. He has actually very good execution.
Yeah, I thought soO should have pulled his workers a little bit earlier, but it was tough because maybe he just doesn't want to get force fielded and then they're not mining. You know what I mean? But whatever he did, he kept making units while being attacked. Pulled the workers at the right time. Had just enough. Made Stats use all his force fields. It wasn't immaculate defense, but it definitely worked.
Yep.
Definitely
Um,
worked.
that's I, I I personally find it fitting though that soO wins this tournament against something called the Soul Train. As it because basically the whole like premise of that fucking build name, like I don't know if people know this, is because it was based off of an interview from Parting back in back during the Broodlord Infestor era when nobody could beat Zerg because infestors. And he basically said, "I created this build because I'm literally betting my soul, and that's what it takes in order to beat the Zerg at that point." And that's kind of, and basically the corollary to that is a Zerg has to bet their own soul to fucking stop the Soul Train. And I think that's basically what happens with soO. He basically bet his soul to defend against the Soul Train, and he wins.
I mean, he hadn't been up 3-2 in a final in 5 years.
Yeah, basically since Zest, I think Zest is the only
Yeah,
one he was all up.
yeah, he was up 3-2 in the Zest final.
Yeah.
Uh, Lost last two, but yeah, I mean, he did like it just. I personally, I was talking to someone, and like the Sue's down 0-2,
Yeah.
and they're like, and I'm like, oh, this is over. I mean, this is it. This is just can't believe this is happening again. And they were just like, you're so pessimistic when it comes to Sue. Just let the guy just play the games and see what happens. Like I think we've all become so resigned. And I'll talk. I'm writing an article for Team Liquid about this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll cover it a lot more in a lot of detail and a lot of words then. But I think we all just got used to Sue losing. Uh, that it was like just I couldn't believe it. I always envisioned, like that I'd be like screaming, jumping up and down, losing my mind. But I don't know. It was just it
You're just a
was
shock.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I was just completely just overwhelmed in a way. In that, like, I guess it goes to show like you never know how you'll react to something until it
Until it happens.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
It was just amazing. I think I cried watching the interview.
Yeah. Smix
Um,
does a good
I
job.
I cried when I rewatched the interview. If I go back and rewatch it again, I'm worried I'll cry again. So I'm gonna avoid doing that
Mm-hmm.
uh, because I gotta maintain some credit. But man, it was an emotional moment. Um, I think this goes down as yeah. I mean, we've talked about Seryl beating Koreans, winning BlizzCon as a historic moment as far as
Narratives go.
StarCraft's like that's kind of like the objective, like the historical view of StarCraft, right?
Yeah.
As far as like emotional moments go, this to me is like it as far as StarCraft. Like you're never gonna have a more emotional moment than Sue winning this tournament. I mean, if you go,
Wait. I think if he wins GSL,
yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. If he goes on, like you said in the interview, this isn't the end for him. If he goes on, maybe he wins 3 GSLs this year in BlizzCon, and then you'll be the cool kid who was saying he was the GOAT before everyone else.
yes, I know. I can't wait for this to happen.
Yeah, but I think as of now, if StarCraft ended today, I would say that Sue winning this tournament was the emotional high point. It's incredible, like Sue. Everybody knows Sue's a very popular player,
Mm-hmm.
but you see like a lot more support for other players, like Beyond. You always knew how popular Beyond was.
Yeah.
You
Somehow,
knew how
I don't
popular
understand
Mara
why,
was.
but somehow, yes.
Yeah, but you knew how popular Mara was. You knew how popular Serral was. Innovation was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Guys like Sue, like he's popular, but there's never like a crazy Sue. There's I'm like the crazy Sue fan, right?
Yeah.
There's never like a crazy Sue fan on Reddit or on Team Liquid who's like nonstop talking about how good Sue is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it seems like everybody came out of the woodwork here. Everyone was really happy for him. Pros, community members, uh, casters, forum posters, shit posters. Everybody.
Yeah.
Um, this is yeah, it's one of the best moments in StarCraft 2 history for sure.
Yeah. Like, uh, obviously, I have my own personal taste. I actually think this is, yeah, definitely emotionally speaking, I feel like this is the biggest moment. Like, I'm thinking really quickly. Like, I think it's definitely bigger than Seryl's like victory at BlizzCon. Like, because I personally don't think of it as like a war between foreigners versus Koreans. I've always thought of it as like an individual 1v1 game. So like,
Mm-hmm.
so that didn't really click with me. Duck Duck losing off. Was it on? Like basically he was losing on the second stage without ever getting like a mainstream game. Like literally his last game of his career. That was pretty emotional, but like that was more like depressing than like uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
MVP winning with a broken back was always sick, but like that didn't have like the buildup of years of pain compared to Sue's GSL losses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
MVP was like at the top of the world, and
and
then
like
he came down.
he still kept coming back for more. Like
Yeah,
that's fucking
exactly.
sick, but like it didn't have the years of pain to build it up. At Sue, so I definitely think at least emotionally, this is probably the biggest StarCraft 2 moment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but having said all of that, I gotta rain down on people's parade a bit. Keswick Cup did definitely count, guys. This is not like literally soO lost every fucking finals and then won this one. He did win Keswick Cup. That was a thing. That was a legit tournament. It wasn't as big as IEM Katowice. I'll give you that. I actually think IEM Katowice is a bigger tournament just because of the amount of players that are playing, the quality of players, the prize money, if you want to count it. I think the prestige level is even higher than the Keswick Cup. But that still counted. Like soO did, like before this tournament, that would have gone down as like soO's like happiest moment was winning that tournament. So I think that counted, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah, I think this is actually an interesting point. I worked on an article with soO recently at the Players Lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Shameless plug, check that website out. We write some cool articles over there. So I worked with soO on an article, and we were just talking about the future, because I think a lot of people don't. A lot of pro players don't really talk about life beyond pro gaming. They're just like, oh, like they retire and then that's it. They're like not really heard from again most of the time,
Yeah.
But I talked to soO about just the future and what he's looking forward to, what he's afraid of, etc. But he always has said like that the Keswick Cup victory was like one of the highlights of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of his career. Like that feeling that he felt then was why he became a pro gamer. That's pretty much the words he used. He's used multiple times. But at the same time, he always made a clear distinction. And that's why in the article where he said, but I still haven't won a top tier championship like GSL or BlizzCon. And IEM's included in that tier in his definition. We just cut the words to make it. But
yeah,
the point is, as you said, Keswick Cup was a crowning achievement for soO. But I always think, having lost so many GSLs, it naturally got overshadowed, right?
Yeah.
But like he knew, and I think it's abundantly clear at this point that soO will still be like, the Kong thing is like that will follow him for his whole career, even if he wins a bunch more, he'll still be.
I think he can break it if he just won like 3 GSLs.
But even then, it would still be like that.
It would always be part of him. But like, here's the thing. Like, I don't know if you obviously don't watch CS:GO, but like, basically the guys who just won IEM Katowice, Astralis.
Yeah, they destroyed. Yeah,
the core of that team were known as chokers for like 4 years, like Kong level chokers, every one of them, and then they became the greatest of all time. Like if you can like if you start winning. Eventually, like if you win enough, whatever you did in the past will disappear. I think, like it'll still be a part of him. But if soO wins back to back GSLs for whatever reason this year, I think he'd go down as. I think that would be a much smaller part of his legacy.
Yeah, and I think if we were to like pause time right now, winning this IEM is a big enough achievement that it'll stand at equal or even a little above, all the, GSL stuff when you talk about like his career and as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I think like Keswick Cup was never enough to overshadow all the GSL losses. But this tournament is the kind that like, I feel good knowing that yeah, I mean, he literally said, only when I become a champion can I retire without regret. Yeah. Because that championship, at Keswick Cup wasn't to the degree of something like this. And this is the kind of thing now where, like, I think he can really be happy with his career. I mean, he's done, at this point, obviously it would be great to win GSL. It would be great to win BlizzCon. But I mean, realistically, how much hasn't he accomplished in his career?
I mean, I've always brought up this point. Like, there's, like, you can't say he's the greatest of all time, but he's in the conversation because he's already done things that transcendent above every other player. Like, name another player who's gone to 6 GSL finals. You literally can't. What about 5? Maybe did Innovation get to 5? Maybe he did.
I think Innovation and MVP have both been to 5.
Yeah, Innovation to 5. Okay, but 4 back-to-back, nobody's done that,
No.
right? So like he's already done like in terms of peak consistency, I actually think he's the best of all time. Because like yeah, Life had like a freakish year in 2015, but that only lasted about 6 months. soO's like freakish year lasted about uh, a year and 3 months. Like his freakish like peak consistency, like literally number one or number two in the world, was that
Yeah, and
long.
then even in 2015, he was I mean, how many Zergs were better than him?
Yeah, like none. So
I
basically,
mean,
that's like
BL was better. Dark was probably worse.
mm-hmm,
Rogue was probably worse. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
like the thing, and then you compare him to like MVP. Like MVP definitely didn't do that. Like I'm like the biggest MVP fan. Definitely didn't do that. Okay, Life definitely didn't do that. Who else is there? Innovation definitely didn't do that. Like he has accomplishments in his career that overshadow all the people on the greatest of all time list. So that's why like I put him in the list of like a transcendent StarCraft 2 player, somebody who achieved something so incredible already before this IEM Katowice victory. He already achieved something so incredible that I wouldn't be opposed if somebody went out to me and was like, "You're wrong about MVP. soO is the greatest of all time." Like, yeah, so that's a legit opinion. Like, it is. He's already done something like nobody else can do.
yeah. I mean, he's definitely ingrained himself into the history of StarCraft,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something. I mean, not many people do that. You know, Mario did that
Mm-hmm.
this year,
Yeah.
but
Last
you
year.
know,
Yeah.
last year Mario did that. I mean, but you look at the number of people who've like accomplished something just so otherworldly that it will
Never be touched.
never be touched. I mean, that's just that's soO. soO is an elite company in that regard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Think about
But
that about ends it. I guess
yeah,
I guess I'll ask you one last thing. Is soO gonna win this GSL finals? This GSL like it's in around the
so
16 now.
he plays round of 16 this weekend actually Saturday. Pretty crazy that he played TY in Alima League. I mean, he played TY at Katowice. He flies home tomorrow. He's playing TY in Alima League.
Mm-hmm.
This weekend he's playing TY in GSL round of 16. So yeah, guess we'll get to see him play a lot against TY.
Uh huh.
But I think his group's very doable in the round of 16. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, why not? You know,
Yep.
it's clear that he can beat anybody in Zerg versus Zerg. He played pretty well in ZVP. I do wonder, and this will be a question, and maybe we'll get answered if Stats gets far. Stats is out in this season
Yeah.
thing, but maybe in a future season, how that series might have been different in our GSL preparation format, where they both had a week to prepare for the final.
Here,
We again,
like if
no,
here's the thing. If it was a semifinals, I'd still go with soO. I don't know if I'd go with him soO for the finals.
yeah. I mean, I hope soO makes it to the final because then we'll get to see. It's soO versus the finals is one thing, but soO versus the GSL finals
So
has
that's the
been
highest order, right? That's like,
yeah
the
exactly.
story isn't
So
over.
yeah,
He's still Sisyphus here still has to push up one boulder left,
yeah,
right?
and I think it's good what he said in the interview with Smix translated that like this isn't the end for him. He's still gonna pro game for at least this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'll still be cheering for him.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people will be, and good luck. I hope he wins GSL too.
yeah. I'll go ahead and end with this. I think his two biggest uh the two biggest people, I don't know what you want to call it, like obstacles. Two biggest obstacles in this GSL run is probably going to be Innovation and Maru.
Mm-hmm.
Like, despite the fact they both got taken out, I still think they have a quality in them. I still think like if they, I think both of them have always been very good GSL players in general. So I think those are the two guys I think he has to watch out for if he wants to win this one.
Yeah, and they're just awesome Terrans versus Zerg. That helps their case.
Yep. All right. See you guys later.
Yep.